Hey guys, and welcome back again to Rage Gaming and more Shadow of the Erdtree. We're once again talking more weird, useful, and hopefully interesting things today you might not know about in this DLC. Though, again, we are covering the whole topic in general now. We've got some follow-ups to highlight from the comments of this series, and also a couple cool community finds to look at and kind of work out what's going on. So let's just dive in to today's episode. Alright, for our first thing, we have a follow-up topic. Last time I showcased this cool comparison between Vengal, an enemy from Dark Souls 2. As it turns out, Vengal was reused to the base level to create a new enemy in Elden Ring, which just so happens to be radahn. They have the same swing with each weapon, followed by the double swipe attack at the end, which just has this similar feel. Either way, we talked about that comparison, how interesting it is that they reused so many assets from the previous games as a foundation to build on for Elden Ring. How there's actually a lot of enemies that are familiar bases they're built on, and yeah, that's not a bad thing. Elden Ring is so massive and so dense and filled with so much variety that it's fair and honestly genius for them to take from their previous creations, change their pace, add to the design, but they had something original to build off of. So I wanted to come back with more looks and comparisons to show how they've actually done that with multiple enemy types or even bosses. So first here we have the Omen Killer, who's so clearly an updated Capra demon from Dark Souls 1. We see the similar stance and posture while they're holding these two heavy cleavers as the weapons of choice. The most instantly familiar move they both have is the jump slam with both of the cleavers down for a nasty crushing blow. Obviously, that's a super scary single move for the Capra demon, where with the Omen Killer, they do it repeatedly, over and over. We also see that the theme with the older versions to the new is that they've added more to the moveset, like Omen Killer has the fire breath, but there's still the original familiar moves that are just enhanced. Like they have similar weight behind the swings, where when they're swinging those big cleavers, it seems they have to recover after that nasty swing. But what else? Well, what about the demi-human queens of Elden Ring? These big fellas are huge beast humans that sit on their haunches, dragging themselves around with a big staff. Then they use that staff to cast spells, or, do other stuff like attack and swing with it, roar to call their allies for aid. In this case, we see spells like glintstone pebble shots, or more shotgun-style blasts. And when it swings with the staff, it does kind of overbalance itself because of the way that it's sat. But the comparison we would make here is actually the phase 1 of a boss fight from Dark Souls 3, the super annoying Osiris and his invisible baby. Have any of you seen Ocelot around? Anyway, you can see the same kind of thin, tall and hunched figure in Osiris compared to the demi-human queens, a staff that works again as a tool to cast spells, even though the spells that he casts are certainly different in nature. He also will swing it, kind of overbalancing himself in a similar way. Naturally, Osiris goes mad and does start swinging around like a beast on all fours as the fight progresses. That's super different, but the phase 1 part is super comparable, and I would say they obviously reused and adapted it for the demi-human queens. And then the last comparison I want to make is an absolute classic so that we get it out the way. The most reused enemy in the entire series of FromSoft is easily the Demon Vanguard, aka the Asylum Demon, aka the Stray Demon, aka Erdtree's avatars in Elden Ring. Yet the Erdtree avatars base enemy type goes all the way back to the original Demon Souls game with the first boss, the Vanguard Demon. But yeah, it's been in various Souls games, like say the first boss enemy you encounter, also in Dark Souls 1, the Asylum Demon. I don't know why they love these enemy types with their big butt slams, but at least the avatar redesign is cool. It's not just the same demon again, but a living tree that's shaped to collect dew from the trees, which is probably what gave them life. But they ultimately are the same base enemy with a big stick weapon they slam around, jump slam attacks, only they gave them more speed and a wider range of attacks, and maybe actually magical effects on that butt slam. They even created different types in Elden Ring, like the Scarlet Rot version we're looking at here, compared to the golden magic users. But yes, at this point I expect to see this enemy in every game they ever release, so I wonder what new version we'll get. And I like to compare them, it's cool. So are there any others that we could look at that maybe I've just not realized or thought of? Right, moving on, let's now talk about missed opportunities. A couple things that would have been cool but simply don't work. Now obviously we can talk about the lack of the Moog shackle working in the consort radahn fight. I've referenced that in this series before. The shackle provides a brief stun in the Moog fight, much like the Margit version. It's not crazy, just a little interrupt to DPS window you can create, but with the right setup that can be insane obviously. And you can do it against both versions of Moog, whether it's his Shadow under Lindell or the real deal in phase 1 specifically. Now despite that fact, we can't use the item for any relevant use in the final fight of the DLC against consort radahn, because the consort is a combination of radahn and Moog, although this version of it is hard to tell that Moog's in there. But yeah, it would have been cool if the Moog shackle did something here, even if it was just like a small grunt or reaction from Miquella to say, that's not going to work here. But yeah, there's that reference again. Missed opportunity, but a different ones I want to talk about is actually the Serpent Hunter. This weapon's still really good, like a relatively meta pick. It has no stat requirements to use, absolutely kicks butt, mainly due to the reach and thrust poke attacks, but you can also use the weapon skill technically, even if it's slow, hitting hard with no wind effect during the rykard fight. That's where it's meant to be used though, where it's empowered with those wind enhancements, increasing the range of all your attacks massively, letting you poke the giant monster effectively. The weapon skill lets you smash the target though, interrupting and stagger rykard easily. That's the best thing to use. Overall, it's an awesome spectacle of a fight, one of my favorites, largely due to the weapon. So where is it that Serpent Hunter could have had that effect again in the DLC? Why not Messmer's Phase 2 specifically? In Phase 2, Messmer and his Great Serpent that he's transforming into throughout that phase could be relevant for that weapon. Sure, it's certainly not specifically the immortal snake we see with rykard, but it is a really relevant comparison. We could have had some kind of acknowledgement, like when he's transforming, the Serpent Hunter gets like a useless wind VFX, or maybe Messmer acknowledges the weapon, even if it won't do something here. I know they couldn't give us the same gimmick weapon for Messmer, it ruined the fight with the health pools and all that, but there is the giant snake skin we found by the Ove Mother statue we've discussed in this very series, the lore implications that maybe the Great Serpent came from the Lands of Shadow based on that, or something's going on. So a weapon tied to the hunting of the Great Serpent or serpents, it would have been cool to see something like that in the serpent part of Messmer's fight, even if it wasn't like an actual physical effect that makes the fight easier in any way. Moving on to another seemingly missed opportunity, the very concept of sorcery and those magic spells in the DLC as a whole. It did feel like sorcery got a bit shafted in the DLC to me, with like only 14 new spell options, some of them the same attack but more projectiles or gimmicky. So yeah, I think it's a missed opportunity to give players more spells, as generic as that is. But what's interesting and why we bring this up is the fact that there are spells in the DLC that we don't get to use that are new. Take these enemies, the spellcasters in the different catacombs, these strange casters that have multiple things. One of their main spells you'll see is this insanely long range, essentially one main shard that flies at you, but it fires off multiple faster shards from its location as it moves forward. Those extra shards super quick and seem to bounce or reflect off walls or just the air. And they're basically just an annoying, tricksy projectile that, you know, can catch you out. You dodge the main shard, but the multiple small ones that come out can hit you during the recovery. The idea of that for us could just be useful against a more mobile boss or target, or in general PvP. I feel like there are other spells and incants and such that we do see in the DLC that we never get to use, which is just strange to me, especially when we're calling out for more options. And they've designed them, they took the time to make them, but they just didn't give them to us. Obviously, it doesn't matter if it's meta relevant or not, some spells we got certainly aren't. So why? Just makes you wonder. Okay, for this next one, I'm standing here in an original location of the original base game. This is the Shaded Castle, where you start to find these kind of spooky, weird statues all around. We're actually here to discuss one specific exact statue that has some spooky, unexpected behavior. I've never noticed this in game myself, but I am assuming that this has always been there, to be honest. I'd like you to watch this little clip here. This comes from the Elden Ring subreddit user Valerica-D4C, who posted this very popular clip like 2 weeks back. They were talking about how they were passing through this area and they had a bit of a jump scare. As you can see, the statue just behind them in the center that's lit up looks like it's turning its head to them and away from them. As they walk away, it's looking at them, but as they get closer, it looks away. Now, obviously, it's been discussed a lot in the comments of that Reddit post. I'm going to talk about that, but here I am to talk about this exact statue and show you what's happening in person instead of like a black bar zoomed in low quality video. Is this really a thing in my game too? This one here is kind of doing this praying hands thing. So as I walk away from it, it should turn its head and look at me. That is so horrifying. I'll zoom in on my editing here so you can see. And then as I walk in, it turns away. It's not actually moving, but that's such a spooky little effect. I feel like that's got to be intentional, surely. As I walk in, yep, there you go. Okay, so here's what's actually happening. We zoom in and you have the close texture, the detailed texture. As we're looking at it, we see the statue and all the grooves and even little cracks. But as we walk away, we walk out of kind of a radius of high quality textures. And you imagine how big Elden Ring is and the density of all the things. It's trying to save processing power, I guess, by having a ring around us be the high detailed one. The closer you get to stuff, the higher the detail, the further away, the more blurred it becomes. So as I zoom in, you can see that all the texture is gone. As I zoom in, it's giving it a little bit more detail. Like by using the telescope, it's going to give it a slight increase of texture quality, but we can see beyond that if I zoom in on this footage. I believe that is slightly different when I'm not zoomed in with a telescope. So that's 3 versions of one statue right there. It's so interesting. But yeah, obviously as I walk in the range, the radius, the textures load in and it makes it look a lot more detailed. It's going from what seems to be like a completely textureless, almost smooth thing, so the face is gone, so it looks like it's turning towards me, but in reality it's just loading in the texture. And that is actually something that was commented by the original poster of that video. I feel like this was intentionally placed just to give you a spook, because there is an item over here, or rather a ghost you can talk to, and a little ambush spot where a dog attacks you. So you are drawn over here and then you turn and then you look towards that statue that's lit up and then it does that. Let me know what you think though. Really cool discovery. All right, so for the final thing, it's back again. We're talking chair. Rellana got a chair and it's been a major topic of discussion. Huge lore implications. Not really, but we have mentioned it twice in this series for a couple different reasons. Funny generally. People were suggesting that killing the boss from the back, the chair's meant to prevent that, but obviously I showed that's still possible. Basically, I got a lot of comments, so I can't really credit any one person. It was just a lot of people talking about this, that she's actually at a gazing grounds, and that's not a random thing. You gotta think about it. The castle Enzis is this big fortress, and we've got all these massive buildings, but she's at the end here. She's not in her chamber. She's over here in this strange room. And the name of the room, after you actually defeat her, is the Enzis Moon Gazing Grounds. So when you come here, you can look up and realize, hang on, there's no roof here, there's no ceiling at all. It's just open sky. So she's gazing at the moon and the sky, I guess at night. That's what she does. But it's not Rellana that's special about that. She's not the only person that does that, and that's shown in the original game. But you're not actually looking up. You're going to sit in your chair and you're going to look down. You're going to look at the reflection in the very clearly designed circular pool that's meant to be a mirror of the sky, so that you're able to look down and see the reflection above. In any case, this is not the only place in the game where we have a circle of water and a chair to look down / up and look at a reflection of the moon. If we look at the original game's map, Carrier Manor, and at the top left where we have that boss fight, there's the Royal Moon Gazing Grounds. And what do we find in the Carrier Manor version? We find a much bigger circular pool of water to reflect the sky and the stars and the moon. And we do not find one chair, we find tons of them. Tons of them. Obviously they're completely out of use. Many of them are disheveled, knocked down, broken, whatever. But it is indeed the exact same chair. It's no shock or surprise to anyone that, you know, Rellana comes from the Carrier faction, and this is clearly just something that the Carrion faction does, whether it's the upper ranking members or not. And so when she resigned herself to the Land of the Shadow, Rellana must have had them build that room and the pool to reflect the sky in and sit and look at. So when you destroy her one chair that she has, pretty messed up. They should introduce a new patch where that enrages her and makes her attack 5 times as fast. Anyway, really cool lore concept. I'm glad we got to the bottom of the chair update. But there you have it, another set of things down, and as always, let me know if there's anything you'd like to add to the topics today we might follow up on in a future video, or if you've just got something totally new that I should take a look at. Without this back and forth that we do have in this series, I definitely don't think we'd be able to make new videos of this topic nearly as often. So just a quick thank you then to everyone who does get involved. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.